Welcome to lecture number 22. The topic is 3.7, the Articles of Confederation. The main theme that we're looking at here is politics and power. Our learning objective for today is to explain how different forms of governments developed and changed as a result of the Revolutionary period. We're going to begin with the state constitutions. So in 1776, as soon as the Second Continental Congress declares independence, the states are going to be ordered to write new state constitutions that break ties with Britain. The key concept here says many new state constitutions place power in the hands of the legislative branch and maintain property qualifications for voting and citizenship. Common features that these constitutions had aside from the legislative branches was that they included declarations or bills of rights for the protection of individual liberties from the government. They're trying to set up limited government. They had separate branches of government with a legislative branch, an executive branch, and a judicial branch. They also expanded suffrage for white males. They reduced the amount of property necessary for white males to be eligible to vote. Now, all of the requirements vary from state to state, and New Jersey even allowed women to vote up until 1807. There are going to be differences within each state constitution because each one had its own set of ratification debates, and the states themselves were different in character and culture. Now, the new form of national government that is created is called the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation unified the newly independent states, creating a central government with limited power. The actual text of the Articles of Confederation called the arrangement a league of friendship between all of the states. It's more of an alliance than it is a central form of government. However, it does establish a unicameral legislature. That means that they have one house for their legislature. There's no executive or judicial branch. For this one legislature, every state receives one delegate to represent them. The delegate is not directly elected by the people of the state. Instead, it is elected by the representatives in the state legislatures. In that unicameral legislature, in order to pass laws, they need to have a supermajority of 9 out of 13 states to be in agreement. They needed at least 75% majority, and if they wanted to change anything within the Articles of Confederation, they needed unanimous consent to make an amendment. That means that any amendment needed to have support of all of the states in the Articles of Confederation. The powers that it gave the central government was the ability to declare war, to enter into treaties, and borrow money, but that is really it. That was probably for the best, given that it would have taken a long time to agree on anything else under the system it had established. However, the lack of powers that were available to the Articles of Confederation is still going to be one of the biggest problems of the era. The next part of the key concept says, after the Revolution, difficulties over international trade, finances, interstate commerce, foreign relations, and internal unrest led to calls for a stronger central government. The problems just pile on here for the Articles of Confederation. As far as international trade goes, England, after having been defeated in the Revolutionary War, retreat as a trading partner. Before the Revolution, they made up about 75% of all colonial trade. And after the Revolution, they wanted to show the new United States just how valuable it was to be part of the British Empire. It kicks off a post-war economic depression that's going to be difficult for the Articles of Confederation to do anything about. They don't have the ability to borrow money to spend and lend in order to stimulate the economy. As far as finances, the legislature did not have the power to tax, so they had no revenue. They also had all of this war debt that had been accrued by the Second Continental Congress that they had to pay back. All the states had their own war debt that they had to pay. The only way that they could raise revenue was to ask for money from the states, and each state would decide if they would give it or not. Each state had its own currency and controlled how much was printed. Therefore, some were mired by inflation. That means that since there was so much currency printed, the value of it was really low, making prices high, and making it hard for consumers to purchase goods. One example of such currency here on the slide is from the state of New Hampshire. They could print as many of these as they wanted. On interstate commerce, the states could place tariffs on one another. They saw each other as economic competitors. They wanted to protect the industries within each state's boundaries, and so therefore they would place tariffs on one another to try and protect those domestic industries. It had the negative effect of slowing down or deterring economic activity within the United States. Because prices of goods across different states were artificially higher, it would limit the amount of goods traded across state lines. Problems continue with foreign relations in the new United States. The new country was too weak to enforce the Treaty of Paris. Per the Treaty of Paris, the British were supposed to evacuate all of their troops and all of their outposts in the western United States. However, they remained there through the 1800s because the United States had no ability to enforce that part of the treaty. The United States was also supposed to pay out some of the damages that was incurred by the Loyalists during the war. Again, the Articles of Confederation were too weak to get the states to pay for their claims that the Loyalists were making for their territory or property that they had lost as a result of the war. Therefore, Britain felt justified in leaving those troops there. The poor economic conditions eventually led to internal unrest. Shays' Rebellion happened in 1786 to 87. It was led by Daniel Shays, a Revolutionary War veteran disgruntled over a debt crisis that's going on in Massachusetts. A lot of people are going in debt in Massachusetts, and a lot of people are being put in debtors' prisons because they can't pay back those debts. There's a lack of paper money, there's high taxes, and so he takes up arms, tries to raid an armory of the state, and after several months, his rebellion is put down by the Massachusetts militia. It showcased the weakness of the Articles of Confederation, that if there were to be another rebellion such as this one, that it would not have the ability to deal with it, that it would be reliant on the states to handle it and possibly face great catastrophe if it can't. This is going to lead to calls for a new form of government that's going to be stronger, to be better able to deal with these problems. The one positive thing the Articles of Confederation were able to do was to organize the Northwest Territory under the Northwest Ordinance. The last key concept says, as settlers moved westward during the 1780s, Congress enacted the Northwest Ordinance for admitting new states. The ordinance promoted public education, the protection of private property, and a ban on slavery in the Northwest Territory. This Northwest Ordinance organized Western Territory for settlement. It created the plots that were going to be sold off. The land sales were going to feed the treasury because it was going to be the new national revenue. This was the only way that the Articles of Confederation could get money in the treasury because of their inability to tax. A portion of the land sales would go to fund education in the territory. Land would be specifically parceled out so that a portion of the profits was going to fund schools in those sections. Finally, it put a ban on slavery in this new territory. So in the entire Northwest Ordinance, slavery would not be allowed, so no one could cross into these territories and bring enslaved people with them. For that reason, as enslaved people begin to escape their enslavement by running away, more and more of them are going to go into this new territory, thinking that they're going to be able to live freely once they get there. It's critical to point out, as seen on the map on the left sides, that there are still native tribes that are living in the Northwest Territory, despite it having been parceled out in portions to be sold to white settlers. The success of the Articles of Confederation is to get the original states to agree to give up their competing land claims in the West, though they were not able to guarantee that territory for settlement with native groups that inhabited it. They're not going to stop fighting against white settlement in this region until 1795, when the fighting ends at the Battle of Fallen Timbers. Alright, so that's it for this lecture. Let's go through the recap. State constitutions established Republican forms of government while limiting voting rights mostly to white males with property. The new form of government, the Articles of Confederation, was the first form of government that included a unicameral legislature with limited powers. A weak central government led to problems with foreign economic and domestic policy, and one good thing that the Articles of Confederation did was establishing the Northwest Ordinance. It organized Western Territory for future settlements and banning slavery within the region. Thank you for watching. If you would like to watch the next lecture, you can click on the video link on the screen, and if you are looking for more practice to help you on the AP exam, you can visit APUSHslides.com. I wish you the very best in all of your studying and look forward to seeing you back on the next lecture.